Thank you for joining today's call with Tried and True Consulting. Today we'll be covering cybersecurity and PCI compliance. We're sorry for the delay in start today. Hopefully you've been able to see the presentation at this stage. Today we'll have several topics that we will cover regarding cybersecurity and PCI compliance. The call is being recorded, so as you joined in today, you may have had to acknowledge that you accept the call being recorded. Your phones and your either phone, your computer, monitor, and microphone have been set at mute. Our presenters today are going to be myself, Don Wilczynski, the moderator, as well as Scott Knabusch. We are having some technical difficulties. Hopefully Scott is able to join in. If not, we will work through that, and I'll tackle the pieces that he has. And then our featured speakers are both Lee Fraizer, owner of Chirocare, and Hannah Whitlock from North Georgia Insurance. Looking forward to discuss these topics. As a quick disclosure, information we're sharing today it surrounds the importance of PCI and maintaining a secure network at your business. We will disclose some of the costs associated with it as a result of and with your payment processing. So during this process, you'll hear more about how to maintain a safe network and what the results and costs could be in the event that that is not completed as a company. And then moving forward, Lee Fraizer will be sharing some great insight as a result of the industries he's worked with in IT services and providing services for chiropractic companies. Great. He has to comply with some of the HIPAA, all the HIPAA requirements, and he does work directly with small businesses as well. Hannah Whitlock will be providing information on private insurance policies, how to protect yourself against breach, and what is really covered or rejected in a private policy. Questions that we will answer will include, as I listed on the page, and I'll just quickly read over them. That way there's no misunderstanding, or I may expand slightly. PCI compliance, what does that really mean? Which processors provide breach coverage that's associated with your merchant application and account? What are the basic coverage requirements for breach protection? Is my internet even secure? How do I protect my internet and business from being compromised or hacked? What network should I have at my business? Why should I use an IT firm versus just calling my cable or phone company or internet company for solutions? And can I afford to not carry insurance? What is covered, what's not covered, and how do I go about making sure my cybersecurity policy, how is it different from my PCI policy provided by a processor when you sign up? Those questions and many more will likely be answered through this call today. I will check in really quick. Scott, are you able to talk at this stage?
I'm in. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. So fantastic news. So thank you, Scott. And I will turn this over to you now.
All right. There we go. Thank you, Don, and welcome everyone who's able to attend, our PASBA member partners, and also especially our featured and guest speakers, Lee and Hannah. So as Don mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about PCI, payment industry data security, and kind of set the stage for both Lee and Hannah. And I want to begin by just pointing out and reminding everyone, the acronym PCI, many of you may have heard of this or seen this on your merchant billing statement from time to time, but just in general, overall, it involves two basic things, in that there's a network scan and an online self-assessment questionnaire for merchants to complete each year annually. And so these are the industry data security standards, and all payment processors are required to make available a program and help merchants complete the compliance process annually. So this is not a tried and true consulting payment program that our company does, only. It's really encompassing the entire payment industry as a whole, and it's an industry standard. So as you see here, what we wanted to kind of clarify for today's discussion with our speakers is just start by pointing out what is in scope versus what's out of scope. And what we mean by that is in scope being what items are the liability of the merchant, the business owner, as it relates to securing sensitive cardholder data, versus what items are out of scope. Again, meaning the opposite of that, which is, what items certainly involve data security, but are the responsibility of other parties in the entire ecosystem. So for example, in scope really relates to data that's quote unquote at rest, as you see here. So what does that mean? It's data that is on site at the business location, perhaps held in a stored data area like a locked filing cabinet, or perhaps on a computer. Hopefully it's encrypted. Things of that, data basically at rest, not being used or in motion. In comparison, out of scope refers to, and I'll start first with the third sub bullet at the bottom, data in transit. Okay, so this involves data from starting with really the card reader, if you're a merchant business who accepts payments in person. So it could be the card reading device. For many of our CPA firm partners, they're collecting card data over the phone and then putting it into their payment gateway or payment software. So in that case, when that data moves from that gateway and is in transit to the processor, you see the second bullet there, the processor host, that is also out of scope for the merchant. So when you think about the device itself, out of scope for the merchant, where you collect that cardholder data for the payment. When the cardholder data moves from that device or gateway and is in transit to the processor and their host platform or system that actually processes the payment through Visa and MasterCard system, that is while it's in transit. And then while it's at the host, all of that those touch points are out of scope for the merchant. Okay, so as we move on to the next slide, we're sharing an example here. Thank you, Don. We're sharing an example of a typical merchant services agreement in what's called the program guide. And the program guide details all the aspects of merchant account. And of course, today we're talking about data security. So this has a lot of verbiage here. And I am going to read some of this because we really want to highlight what the real liabilities are for the merchant and what they are not. And then obviously we'll have Lee and Hannah, our guests and featured speakers, bring their expertise into play. So starting with the first yellow highlighted section there in the first paragraph, it reads, merchants shall be solely responsible for any unauthorized access to cardholder information or transaction data that resides on the merchants or their third-party agents, their software systems or networks. So the merchant is solely responsible for that. And 2 sentences forward, it goes on to specify that any fees or liability assessments or fees resulting from actual or alleged non-compliance will also be the sole liability of the merchant alone. Okay. Now, just continuing in the blue highlights, it goes on to explain merchants processing less than 1 million annual Visa transactions. That's not 1 million in sales or payment volume. It's transaction count. And using third parties for point of sale application, terminal installation and integration must engage the payment card industry. That's where the term PCI comes into play. Qualified integrator reseller, professionals to install, integrate, and support point of sale applications and terminal installation and integration. So basically, it goes on to finish by saying that the merchants shall indemnify and hold the member bank and the processor harmless against any losses or damages arising from acts or omissions of the merchant servicers or agents engaged by the merchant. So basically where the merchant's choosing their partners and using their solutions that the merchant uses at their place of business. And I just want to briefly point out the difference between the member bank and the processor that's referenced there. The processor, think of that as the platform or the processor who's moving the money through the interchange system through Visa and MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. Whereas the member bank is the bank that acquires the sales receipt and is essentially responsible for the digital physical process of moving the money and depositing it into whichever bank you prefer to bank with and have your checking account with, your business checking account with. So every processor has to partner up with a member bank, a bank that's a member of Visa MasterCard's association. So then just continuing here, it goes on to say that merchants agree to establish security procedures to protect cardholder information and comply with the Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express payment security requirements, the payment card industry data security standards, and any applicable laws pertaining to the privacy and security of personal information, including and without limitation to non-governmental authorities and so forth. And it goes on to share where additional details and information can be referenced and accessed at the council's website there at pcisecuritystandards.org. Okay. And then it continues, again, merchant acknowledges that any failure to comply with security requirements may result in the imposition of restrictions or fines on the merchant or permanent prohibition of merchants' participation in the ability to accept cards as payments. That's a big one. We really want to emphasize that and really setting the stage of what the liabilities are and what the risks are should there be a data breach. And again, it continues with merchant shall indemnify and hold the processor and member bank harmless against any losses or damages arising from the merchant's actual or alleged failure to comply with security standards, and any losses or damages arising from or related to the merchant's acts or omissions, lack of having security in place that result in actual or alleged breach of data, including but not limited to the merchant's non-participation in any breach security program the processor may offer. And many processors offer a payments industry data security program. We strongly encourage every merchant to do that because just in short, those programs at the very least provide a very low cost solution just for that payment piece. But as our partners are going to discuss here shortly, they're going to touch on a much larger scale encompassing the business as a whole, not just the payment piece related to the business. So again, just to wrap this page up, the key points is that it's the merchant's sole responsibility for the parts that they're liable for. And it's important to know that what the risks are, that they can be great. And it can include whether it's fines or the worst case scenario, the inability to accept payments going forward, which for most businesses, that would make it very difficult to continue operating and staying in business. So moving on here, we wanted to share an example so you could see, there we go. On the right-hand side is a sample of the coverage and liability that one of our partners provides. And on the, I guess it would be the left side as you're looking, it kind of blows up some of the bulleted key points there. So what is and this is the data breach coverage that we offer. And as I mentioned, many other processors offer a similar type program as well, but we're using an example of what we use. But our coverage is $100,000 of liability coverage per merchant. And as you see there, it's capped at $500,000. One of the requirements is you must report within 60 days of knowledge of a data breach. And then this is for level 2, 3, and 4 merchants. Now, in the previous slide, we won't go back, but on the previous slide, it mentioned level 4 merchants are merchants who process less than 1 million Visa transactions annually. So level 4 is the overwhelming majority of all mom and pop independent privately owned businesses. When you start getting into level 3, that's merchants who process greater than that. Level 2 is even bigger, and level 1 are the monster national and global companies. A couple key things here, just to set the stage, and I don't want to steal Lee's thunder, but just recently, since June of this year in 2024, there were 2 breaches. One was with a software company by the name of Slim CD, where over 1.7 million cards and the data on those cards was compromised. And secondly, a company by the name of CDK Automotive, they have software dedicated to car dealerships. Over 10,000 car dealerships were impacted, where literally their systems were shut down, where they could not operate. And it ultimately led to the company, CDK, having to, this was motivated by criminals trying to generate ransom money. And in this particular case, it resulted in them paying $25 million in ransom just to end the cyber attack. And those 2 examples are just a couple. They're publicly available, so I'm not sharing or saying anything that's private information. Feel free to research that on your own. But I want to point out, as it again leads to our featured and guest speakers, the risks there. And we certainly don't want to share this, from the viewpoint of scaring anyone, but we do want to share real world examples of the real liabilities. And it's also important to recognize that what's not stated here is that the overwhelming majority of data breaches actually involve the mom and pop average business owner, like those of us and those of you that are on this call today, the mom and pop businesses. We just don't hear about those in the news quite as much, because obviously when you have national accounts, it has a much broader and farther reach for the news to write an article about a nationally sized large company. Whereas if I had a pizza restaurant in Detroit, Michigan, for example, only people who shopped and bought pizza from me or in that area would know about it or recognize or have any relevance to that if there was a data breach. Whereas a national company, those are the ones you're going to hear about in the news. And lastly, I'll close with the scariest part is that 60% of businesses that do incur a significant data breach close up shop within 6 months. And then that number jumps to 72% within 2 years because of the cost. So if you look at the coverage details on the right-hand side there, and you look at the check marks, the costs that could be involved include notification of cardholders, post data breach credit monitoring, a call center to take questions from those impacted, public relations, the reputational damage, and the result post data breach of having to try to improve that negative publicity. Financial forensics investigation. One of the things in the program details up above that first bullet there under coverage details says a mandatory forensics investigation after a data breach. There's a cost associated with that, and that is covered in that $100,000 of liability coverage. But if you think about all these costs and you don't have some sort of cyber security program in place, you can see why a lot of businesses are not able to sustain those costs and absorb those and still continue to be in operations long term. So hopefully that helps set the stage on what the liabilities are that lie with the merchant directly and which ones don't, and sheds a little light on the risks and also what programs are available. And I'm very excited and proud to be able to introduce our next guest speaker and our featured speaker today. That's Lee Fraizer. He's with Chirocare and going to tell us, share some of his experience in the security space. So Lee, if you could take it away, sir.
All right. Thanks, Scott. And you did steal a bit of thunder on that one on the CDK, but I've got a twist for you as well. So we'll see on We'll see about that one too. But go ahead for the next slide. So I'm with CyberSafe, CyberSafe, multiple companies. Next slide, Don. There we go. There we go. Up. Yep. Next slide. That's the title slide. So there you go. So oh, well, the slide that got updated. So anyway, it is what it is. I want to give you a background from my point of view. I've worked in IT for over 30 years now. I have worked for large companies, small companies. In 2018, we founded CyroSafe and CyberSafe, and we're currently in 32 states nationally. So we handle this type of thing for cybersecurity for all of our clients in across the nation. So we're everywhere out there. And as Scott and Don mentioned, PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, really our specialty is anything that, not to call any IT companies any bad names, but that requires a little bit of research and knowledge, quite honestly. So that's my background. That's why we've been doing this for quite a while now, that I think you should listen to me. Let me give you a little bit of an update of the current state of cybersecurity and security in general. And then we'll get very specific on some of these hacks as well. So in the old days, cybersecurity was based more on what you did, where you went, what you did, and what you didn't do. In 2000, I wasn't running any antivirus. I considered antivirus really bloatware. It didn't really do anything for me. It just slowed my computer down, and I was smart enough to not do the bad things. Okay? Seems pretty reasonable. In 2010, yeah, that started to pull back. And in 2015, that was very much not the case anymore. If you weren't running antivirus, you were asking for it. And I mean that in the worst possible way, because you're asking for it because there are so many things out there in the industry. If you get documents emailed to you, that's a sure way of hacking when you click on and open a document. But the industry's really changed from an IT point of view. To address the points on this slide, ransomware is a service. Everyone's familiar with ransomware. You know basically what it is. Something gets installed on your computer, finds the files that you most want, and then encrypts it, right? Everyone? If you're not, throw us a question. I'll go back and readdress. But ransomware as a service has now become a thing. And what do I mean by that? A very smart bad actor, and many of them, I'm sure, wrote some very sophisticated ransomware. And then they said, you know what? We can make money by selling this to other bad people. And all they need to do is put in their cryptocurrency ID and point us to their address book, and we can then go through and email this out or text it out or whatever to their entire address book. And then you get an email or you get a text. It says, hey, it's from Joe. I trust Joe, right? I'll click on the link. He sent me a picture of a cat. I click on the link on my computer, on my phone, and suddenly maybe it shows me a picture of a cat. Maybe it doesn't. But it installed something. And now you're hacked. And at this point, you don't even know it because your software, that software that's running, is intelligent enough to know before I let anyone know what's going on, I need to find something of value. So ransomware as a service has become a huge thing because now I can send it out as I don't have to have any ransomware knowledge. I send it out to my entire address book. They pay me. They don't know they're paying me to ransomware them. They get their data back. Maybe that's a whole another topic we can talk about. But then I get paid and they never knew it was me. I can claim, oh, I was hacked too. I wonder what happened. It's super stupid easy. So ransomware as a service, port attacks. PCI tries to address this, and we'll talk more about this as well. But your internet presence, your publicly facing IP address, and you all have one, whether you know it or not, at home and the office and anywhere else you are continually being scanned. There are programs out there that are actively scanning every IP address, finds an IP address that responds, or just is out there, excuse me. And then it says, okay, let's ping each of the ports that are out there. If one of them says, hey, I'm open, I'm here, because it has to, if it's open through the firewall, then that person considers that success. I found an open port. Now, at that point, then nothing's been done. But that port list and IP address gets sold off to someone who knows what they're doing. So they might pay $5, $6, I don't know, $10, $50 for an open port, depending on the port type. The ports are uniquely identifiable by their port number. You can obfuscate that if you so choose. But then with a little detective work, I can find out what's behind that. Maybe it's a website where it prompts me to log in. Now I've got secure, private access to try and hack this website as much as needed until I get in. So these port attacks are happening all the time, real time. I had a doctor that called me on a Friday afternoon and said, yeah, I think we've been hacked. And I went, whoa, 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 wait a minute. No one thinks they've been hacked. You either have been hacked or you haven't. And after I got through with that conversation, they're like, no, we've been hacked. Okay. And turns out they had a port open through a firewall. A very well-meaning, very well-intentioned IT company said, oh, you need to work from home? Sure, we can do that. We'll open a port through the firewall. And I hear this and my skin starts to crawl and I get goosebumps. And these things happen. They're out there. You need to make sure that you don't have any ports open through that firewall or that you are monitoring that. So we'll talk about what you need to do in a minute. But everyone here, Scott mentioned, hope your computers are encrypted. If you are in front of your computer and it's not encrypted, I can hack it in 5 minutes. Now that's because I'm such a good cybersecurity guy, right? No, it's because it's on YouTube. It's a valid Windows function. And I've used it for the actual scenario. I can reset someone's password. If their computer's not encrypted, I can log in with no username, no password, reset their password, and then log back out, reset things, and then they can log in because they forgot their password. Well, it turns out that it's also very much used to hack computers. If I have physical access to your device, it's a matter of 5 minutes and I'm in, and no password, no username is going to keep me out. So this is the current state. And oh, by the way, if you hear any news articles or the FBI says, hey, we're getting better, we're arresting the folks, and consider the source because it's not getting any better. We have countries we can't extradite from, and the hacking is happening from there. So this will not get any better anytime soon. Your only hope is to protect yourself as best as possible. So I don't mean to say the sky is falling, but Chicken Little isn't always wrong. So next slide. All right. These are the hacks from 2024. Scott stole my thunder on one of them towards the bottom there, but I got a twist on that one too. Ticketmaster for 500 grand. Change Healthcare, $22 million. And I'd say these numbers are and counting, because if they paid the ransom, which some of these did, they're still trying to recover the data, still trying to get back up and running, still dealing with the consequences. As Scott mentioned, you have to monitor for individuals, the credit. You have to do certain things as part of this. It's just unreal. Anyone, AT&T, anyone getting those text messages daily that you have to say, yeah, it says, hey, Joe, how are you doing? Long time no talk. You're like, I don't know who this is. And if you respond, you're validating your phone number. And then you'll get even more. So you delete and report, right? I hope. So that one was massive. They exposed nearly all of their customers' call data and many of their former customers. I was a former customer, and they exposed my data. I get probably 5 to 10 texts a day that are out of the blue and absolutely garbage. So that one was huge. Bank of America blunder puts 57,000 clients' data at risk. They didn't say it got hacked, but it was at risk. The CDK hack, Scott mentioned that one, 15,000 dealerships affected. That one was critical, huge. They couldn't sell you a car. They couldn't process you out of service because CDK had been hacked. They didn't know how. They didn't know how to price it. They started writing up orders manually. Can you imagine buying a car strictly by handwritten paper? It blows my mind. The twist to that one is the hackers started to call the dealerships and pose themselves as CDK help desk to fix their issue. Therefore, then hacking the dealerships as well. Absolutely diabolical. So you can't trust anybody or anything just because they know a little bit about your information or your situation. And then CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike, I should have put this as 2024 cybersecurity incidents. CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity software. So, but everyone's familiar with what happened, right? Delta couldn't fly planes for a week. Other airlines were impacted, but they got up quicker. So CrowdStrike was a bad version of their code shipped out to everybody, and suddenly you get a blue screen of death. It just, when your computer goes to a blue screen and just won't do anything. Yeah, Delta was dealing with that across all of their computers. So you also have to be careful what cybersecurity software you use. CrowdStrike, I thought, was great software, but it was very low level. Turns out that low level was actually negatively, very badly impacting their customers. So let's go on to the next slide. Happy to talk about any more of these if you have any questions. So what should you do besides just going back to a stone tablet and hammer and chisel? Well, let's talk about some of the questions that Don had mentioned going into this on the next slide here. So, you know, I hear a lot. Hit it one more time, please. I hear this a lot. You know, this is just too much. I can't do it. This truly is manageable. You can do this. As a cybersecurity person, I deal with my clients across the nation, and this is something we can do in real time and help you through. So don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. What's a secure network? Is it subnets and VLANs? Hey, I need a separate subnet for my PCI network. Well, yeah, you do. But what else? Go ahead and tab through all of these until you get to more. Thanks. It could be a managed firewall, but a managed firewall properly implemented can protect you. A managed firewall improperly implemented or not maintained or not monitored is absolutely of no use. So PCI does mention antivirus, anti-ransomware software. Good. That's a good start. But EDR software, term you're probably not familiar with, and you may not be familiar with any of these terms. We're going to talk about some of them in a little bit more detail, but that's what we do. EDR software is an endpoint detection and response. That's where we go over the top for what PCI recommends, because it's a bit of software could be on your managed firewall that will sit there and look at all the things going on in your computer and where it's going. Hey, this is going back to a private site in Yugoslavia or Ukraine or Russia. This is probably bad activity and can actively block it. So if something does get through, you pass your antivirus, pass your ransomware protection, we can still do something about it. And it really is more than any of or even all of this that I put out here. You need to think of a secure network as a holistic view of everything. Who's on your network? What devices are on your network? What network are they on? Do you have a guest network? Do you have clients on your network? Do you have mobile devices? Do your employees use mobile devices to actually do business on your network? There's just a complete list. We have to secure your devices. We have to make sure your mobile devices are up to spec. There's always this one guy, tinfoil hat. He's got an Android phone from early 2000s, and he says, I'm never updating this because they can track you now. And that very well may be. But if you don't keep your devices up to date, you are opening yourself to security risks. So it's a holistic view. Don't think of, hey, my IT guy says I need a managed firewall, I'm good, right? No, you have to look at everything holistically. Next slide, please. All right. So PCI compliance, you are all basically familiar with PCI compliance and that it's important. Yes. Well, what you may not know. I listed some things down below there. You may be aware of all of them. We'll talk through them and then we'll go into a little bit more detail. But what you may not know, penetration testing. Penetration testing is testing for those open ports that are open through your firewall. What's open? Is there anything open? My opinion is there shouldn't be. But that penetration testing will tell me. And then I can go back to you. I can do a little detective work and say, these ports are open. I see there's a website behind this one, or this one goes straight through. You need to do penetration testing. Without that, you're leaving potentially the front door wide open. You need to know who is on my PCI network. So you need to keep that, as one is the points down a little bit lower, to those who need it. So your PCI network should be unique and compact, its own thing. Not, you should have another network for employees. If you want to give your guests, your customers, your patients, whatever you have, a guest network, that should be on another network. And then if as I mentioned before, if your employees are doing business on their mobile phone for you, you need to be managing those mobile devices. So, and keeping them on their own secure network so that we can mitigate any risk if anything is to get a little bit, not a little bit, if anything is to get violated or exposed. All of my PCs need to be secure and encrypted. Encrypted is a great first step, and it's easy to do. Don't fear all of this activity. But your PCs need to be secure, which means they need to be monitored, and not just antivirus. You need to be monitoring the log files for failed logins. Now, this isn't something that you're going to be able to do, not actively and manage that. You have a business to run. We do these things. But it tells us, hey, someone is actively getting through. I had a customer that they got hacked from Ukraine. We traced the IP all the way back to Ukraine, and I could see they got in through the firewall, they got in on RDP, it's a remote desktop protocol, and they hacked. Once they're on your network, they quickly jumped around and did lots of encryption. They got to the database, they did lots of bad things. They came to us hacked. They weren't our customer at the time. So but if once someone's on your network, if you don't have it segmented correctly, you can't stop them. You truly can't. They can hop around too easy. Windows is just, it's just too open. It's too easy to do. And then something a lot of people don't think about is out of support software or freeware, shareware. I have a doctor that loves to, he has this little F-key hotkey program that will put a time and date stamp in a field for him. He sees a lot of patients and he needs that. It's shareware. Shareware is about a hair's breadth away from being ransomware. If you can't tell how that software is making their money, they're making it by hacking or tracking what you're doing. So be very, very careful. And the last point there is limiting access to the PCI data to those that need it, and keep it separate. These are the things that you need to be doing for your PCI compliance and assessment, and going through those questionnaires, setting up policies and procedures to keep this data private and changing your password regularly. Next slide. All right. So, question I get all the time, and it's not always a question, it's generally more of a statement. They're like, oh, I don't need cybersecurity. I've got a cybersecurity policy. Or they'll say, like it's written here, I have a cybersecurity policy, an insurance policy, I'm covered, right? Well, basically, let's discuss, because Hannah's going to bring this up in her slides, which I'm going to give her in a few minutes. But just because you have a policy doesn't mean you're covered. You need to be doing at least the minimum to ensure that you don't get hacked. Hannah will cover that in more detail, but a cybersecurity policy is great. I had a doctor that was hacked. I didn't have they came to me hacked. They didn't have a cybersecurity policy. It cost them $50,000 to get their computers back up. This isn't cheap. Scott mentioned that. So just because you have a cybersecurity policy, you need to keep track of what else needs to be done. Antivirus, ransomware, protection, and having good policies, procedures, and good data hygiene. Next slide. So, and this one came up as part of the webinar. You know, I have a zero liability platform for PCI, but you know, I have zero liability, as it says, right? You may have zero liability where it relates to the PCI processing, but you should be protecting your business. I believe, Scott, you mentioned this earlier. This is not just around PCI. Yes, we need to do certain things for PCI. This is around what happens if they get access to your customer list and they encrypt it. Do you have a backup? Do you have a backup that's not encrypted? What happens if they encrypt your database? What do? You need to protect all the things in your business so that you can function if there ever was an event. Maybe we can mitigate it, or we can prevent it from happening at all. This is the Wild West, but it isn't impossible to survive here. So one last slide. And I'm happy to help. You've got my phone number, my website. If I can help you, please let me know. Any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thanks, guys. So Hannah, I think it's yours.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate you sharing what you've shared. Hannah is coming to us from Risk and Insurance Consultants in Georgia. Hannah has a degree from Kennesaw State in psychology, and for the past 2 years has been working directly with small business owners to help them safeguard their operations from potential claims and risks on their policies and their businesses. So, Hannah, thank you. Hopefully, you can come off mute and turn on your camera and let me know when to advance the slides.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Whitlock, and I work at Risk and Insurance Consultants of North Georgia as a small business producer. And I spend every day talking about small business insurance. And one of those things is cyber liability insurance. So I'm here today to discuss what cyber liability insurance is and why you need it, how it relates to PCI compliance, and how you can obtain a cyber liability insurance policy. So if we just start out looking at the definition of a cyber liability insurance policy, it's a policy that provides specialized coverage for businesses with a combination of for data breaches and provides crucial financial protection. So it's going to cover the costs associated with responding to events like ransomware, extortion, bricking, and data breaches, client outreach, investigations, and business interruptions. If your business has any digital data or if you use any sort of technology, you're going to be benefiting from a cyber insurance policy. And I kind of want to just go into an example, like an everyday example of what a cyber claim may look like. So let's say we have a bookstore owner who one day receives a call from their credit card company and they find out that hundreds of cards used legitimately at their store have been compromised, and it's suspected that hackers have successfully penetrated the point of sale system. And so that's a real life example that can happen to anybody. So when that happens, the first thing that the bookstore owner is going to have to do is they're going to have to hire a forensic investigator to figure out how the hackers were able to get into the point of sale system. And the next thing they're going to have to do is they're going to have to compile a list of all the customers that were impacted, and they're going to have to reach out to them and let them know their data was compromised. And let's say once they do that, some angry patrons of the bookstore decide to take legal action against them for the compromised cards. So now the bookstore owner is also going to have legal counsel to handle that situation for them. If this bookstore owner does not have a cyber liability insurance policy in place, those expenses would be paid out of pocket. And I don't want to say that to scare you, but I want to say that to show you like one second of a cyber attack can pile on expenses and serious issues for a business owner. So again, if your business relies on digital systems, handles sensitive information, or takes on credit card information from clients, a cyber policy can pay for all of the expenses that come with a cyber claim. And we can go to the next slide. So how do you obtain a cyber insurance policy? It's actually a lot easier than you may think. Some carriers ask these questions that I have listed here in a yes or no fashion, but I will say every carrier is slightly different on how they present these questions, whether it's going to be on an application or whether it's going to be verbal. So you just want to make sure that you know these questions and that you can provide proof of these questions. So let's just take one of these questions, for example. Do you use multi-factor authentication for access to sensitive information? So if you answer yes on an application for an insurance policy, you're going to be telling your insurance carrier that you have the safeguards in place to limit any unauthorized access to sensitive information. However, proof of that is not going to be provided upfront, and you don't even need to have it provided at the time of binding. But I will say, if you can provide that information to your insurance agent while you're quoting or while you're binding or even after binding, that's going to help if you need to file a claim, because your agent's going to have those documentation on file. So that way, if a claim does happen, you're not scrambling for proof of the safeguards that you have in place. And I will say as well, if you are obtaining a cyber insurance policy as your number, like that is the first thing that you're doing. Like you have not done anything else to protect your business against any malware. You don't have any antivirus protections in place yet. You don't have the multi-factor authentication in place yet. But you've just decided, I want to get a cyber insurance policy. If you bind that, insurance carrier on the document, the policy documents, the first few pages, actually, they provide you with sources and information where you can log in and create an account where you can set these antivirus and anti-malware protections up, or you can get the multi-factor authentication. So it's not like an insurance carrier is going to leave you high and dry to find resources for these things. They will provide them for you. But again, if you do have them, or if you can answer yes while we're at the time of binding, or if you're planning to implement those sources that an insurance carrier is going to provide to you at the time of binding, that's just going to streamline the process for you if a claim is to arise. And we can go to the next slide. So how does this relate to PCI compliance? I want to first emphasize before moving forward that an insurance policy is a contract between two parties. So there's the insured and the insurer. So in order for an insurance policy to respond, you must abide by your due diligence or your obligations of the policy. So I've screenshotted here an example of the due diligence of a cyber policy. So it says you agree to use due diligence to prevent and mitigate loss insured under this cyber coverage. This includes, but is not limited to, complying with and requiring your vendors to comply with reasonable and industry accepted protocols. And then it gives a list of the things that you need to do in order for your policy to respond. And again, if you're buying this policy and you don't have them right away, the insurance carrier is going to provide these safeguards for you. So again, you're not going to be left high and dry. However, let's say you get this policy and you don't reach out to somebody in IT to get these safeguards in place, and you don't look at the information the insurance carrier provides for you. You just get the cyber insurance policy and you think, oh, okay, I've got the cyber insurance policy now. I'm going to be covered against anything or any malware, any ransomware. They're just going to pay any claim that I have. It's actually an exclusion. So if you do not do your due diligence, that is exclusion. That is an exclusion on the policy. So I want to make sure that you know that it's a contract and you have to abide by the rules of the contract. And the section under the due diligence where it says section D, protecting transactions such as processing credit card, debit card, and check payments, that can include the PCI compliance, which I will talk about in the next slide whenever you're ready. All right, so this slide has a screenshot of the insurer's agreement. So if we look at the insurer's agreement, it actually says that they will pay for PCI fines and assessments for a claim made against you. So let's say you've done your due diligence. You've had your safeguards in place, and a hack or a hacker decides, attacks your business and takes away your company, your customer's credit card information, and now you have to reach out to your clients. Like Scott said earlier, when that happens, there's going to have to be that investigation that's done. That's going to be covered under your policy as well. So there's a huge benefit here into buying a cyber insurance policy if you are in the credit card processing business, but it's not just beneficial for credit card processing. It's going to be beneficial for anybody who uses any sort of technology or stores any confidential or private sensitive information for your clients. And payment is going to be up to the limit on the policy. So I've screenshotted just a declarations page for a cyber liability policy. So you can just see the coverage and you can see a deductible and just what it looks like. So the limits on a cyber liability policy can vary. On the liability policy that Scott showed us earlier, it was 100,000 up to 500,000. Your cyber liability policy can be anywhere from 250,000 to $1 million in cyber liability coverage. So when you have a cyber liability coverage, there is definitely more coverage in case something happens. And what I want to mention too is if you have a general liability policy and you see that there's cyber coverage on there, it is most likely, and I actually will say we've seen it before, it is not going to be enough coverage. So when you see a cyber endorsement on a general liability policy, it's probably only going to be $25,000, maybe $50,000 in coverage. And if you have a cyber claim, the expenses rack up really quickly because there's so much involved when a cyber claim happens. So if you're just relying on your general liability policy with the cyber endorsement, you are leaving yourself in extreme trouble because it's not going to be enough coverage for you. So there's just so much benefit in providing and getting a cyber liability policy. And also, if you are just relying on your general liability policy with a cyber endorsement and you decide to make a claim, there's a couple things that could happen here. One of those is the cyber is just an endorsement. It's not a policy, which means that endorsement may not cover the cyber claim that's happened. So your claim could end up getting denied, but that will still show up on your claims history. So that in the future will potentially raise your premium, or if you're trying to shop your premium the following year, or if you're trying to shop your insurance, you may not be able to get coverage from another insurance carrier because a claim is going to show up on the policy, even if a claim wasn't even paid out to begin with. So there's a lot of danger in just relying on your general liability policy. But if you purchase the cyber insurance policy and you have an insurance claim, I mean, there's a whole list, and you can see it on this page here of just all the things that a cyber insurance policy can protect your business from. And it's going to be separate from your other business insurance. So if you have to file a claim on this policy, it is going to be separate. So if you have to file a claim or on it and you shop your insurance next year, it's not going to impact your other policies. And you can go to the next slide. So what's next? The first thing you want to do is review your current cyber practices. Where are you at? Are they up to par? Do you have the protections in place? And if not, it's okay. Then you would want to talk to your insurance agent, because like I said, this insurance policy is going to be a huge asset for you in protecting your business, because your business is everything to you. So why not buy or purchase a protection in place in case something happens for it? And like we mentioned earlier, it's not the only thing you need to do. So having a cyber liability policy is not going to be the only thing that you need in order to protect your business, but it is going to significantly help in case a claim situation is to arise. So if you need to have any more protection in place, you can talk to your IT, or if you want to buy the insurance policy and use the sources that the insurance policy provides, that is going to be more protections for your business. So it's definitely worth it to talk to your insurance agent today to make sure that your business is protected from a cyber liability claim.
Well, thank you, Hannah. We appreciate you covering the content you covered. Let me get to the next slide here. So a couple of things as we conclude today's call. There's opportunities that that you have to connect with two trusted partners of ours who have an extensive amount of experience in assisting clients with protecting their business from cybersecurity hacks and/or ensuring that you have all the proper protocols in place for your business to operate. Secondly, you have an opportunity, if not through our Hannah, you can definitely talk to your insurance company about some of the points you learned today. I will share just a quick little story. As I go in and out of businesses every day, I often try to figure out, well, what's my best way to talk to a new business about what we can do at Tried and True Consulting. One of those services does include our IT services and support through some of the people that, like Lee, that are on the phone today. The first thing I do when I walk into a business is I don't go run up and talk about payments or Tried and True. I actually sit around, I watch what people are doing. I turn my Wi-Fi network off and I turn it back on. And I look to see how many networks are currently being used by that business owner. You'll be surprised that if I go to 10 places, my experience has been 2 out of the 10 are going to have one network for everything. Their credit card machine, their back office, their internet and Wi-Fi are all just running off of one network. The next 3 are going to have 2 networks, a private network and then a public network. And on their private network, though, they have their security system, their back office operations, and their point of sale system. The third location, the other 5 I'll go to will have anywhere from 3 to 5 networks set up. So let me give you a quick little summary and recap of today's call and tie this story back together for you. If your business is operating with less than 3 networks, you are probably going to find yourself out of PCI compliance, paying non-PCI compliance fees to your credit card processor, and putting yourself at risk as a business owner. You as a CPA firm definitely don't want to have that happen. And I would also encourage you to talk to your business owners that you do your business returns for, or you're providing business services to as an accounting firm. You should ask them, how many networks do you have at your business? Most may not even know, but they should. And my point to this story is, should you only have 1, 2, or 3 networks, and I'm going to come back and tie it all up with the bow in just a second, you probably should be talking to your processor about what are some things I could be doing different, and to your IT company. And if your IT company is a cable network who has AT&T, a Verizon, and or a Comcast, or whoever your cable network may be, and they're doing your business, chances are they're really good at providing you internet and phone, but they may not be so good at understanding the full internet protocol that's required to keep your business secure. Number 2, those non-PCI compliance fees run from $19.99 a month upwards to as much with multiple violations or multiple months that pass. There are a couple processors, we're happy to say we're not affiliated with these couple, but they will charge as much as $199 per month for non-PCI compliance. And should there be an event that happens, although your insurance coverage of $100,000 kicks in with a maximum for multiple locations at $500,000, I can assure you that when push comes to shove and it's time to go into the full forensics, because you've not maintained your PCI compliance, you'll get your $100,000. You'll get no more. And you'll open yourself up to some severe liabilities that extend in fees and fines beyond what the coverage maximum is going to be. So my point to everything here today is, you've heard some great content. This content is one of 3 series that the third of the 3 fall series that we have done at Tried and True. And we believe that we can create a mutually beneficial relationship for you and your clients by partnering with us. These content will be pushed out onto the PASBA Tried and True co website, and Scott will be attending the upcoming PASBA event in Oklahoma City. Feel free to stop by the booth and visit with Scott and talk more. We will have an actual demonstration of some secure products that we provide, and Scott will be prepared to talk with you about how you can make sure that your location is fully compliant and is set with the proper protocols around not just your transactions, your devices, your point of sale, your gateway, but can talk more about what are those other things you should be doing in the way of your network. Again, if you have 1 to 3 networks, you probably need to have a conversation with a company like Lee. And if you have been doing that for years, you probably should talk to your insurance company about, once you fix it, getting yourself a cybersecurity policy might be the best thing that you invest in as a small business owner. So thank you for attending our call series. Again, all 3 call series from our chargebacks, which was in the month of October, month of September, and our first call around Visa, MasterCard pricing and how rates and fees are determined and what are ways that you can reduce your cost of processing was covered. All 3 of these will be available on your site. Again, we thank you very much. This was our final call in the series. We will come back again in the spring with another 3 series. You have a great day. And again, we thank you so much, Lee Fraizer, Hannah Whitlock, and Scott Knabusch for presenting today. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.